welcome again to Gun Safe Academy. What we're doing here today is trying to make it a little more clear what exactly your rights are. Oftentimes people think they have a right to this or that, and they really don't. What your rights are, as defined in the United States Constitution, are the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk a little bit about the Bill of Rights and what it actually says and what it doesn't. Okay, so the First Amendment, freedom of speech, press, religion, and petition. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or of the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. What this means: the First Amendment protects people's rights to practice religion. You can worship God any way you want. Or no religion. Worship no God. To speak freely. Now obviously there are limitations on freedom of speech. You can't yell fire in a crowded movie theater, and that makes sense. But freedom of speech means that you can disagree with the government, and they cannot jail you or imprison you simply for that disagreement.
And freedom of speech doesn't just protect polite conversation, polite speech. It's meant to protect speech that government officials or others might find offensive or,
right,
or disagreeing.
So, yeah, saying that a senator, for example, is a shithead, that would be protected speech. The senator's not going to like it very much, but you can say that, and it's not illegal.
For a couple of years ago, you might remember a senator calling the president a liar during a speech, which the Republican Party later made him apologize for. Again, that's legal. You can call anybody you want a liar. I mean, if you believe it to be true, and well, you get into libel or something like that. But freedom of speech. If you want to call the president a liar because you think he's lying, you can call him a liar.
Right. Now, and they could possibly sue you for that, but they cannot put you in prison for it. Okay. The freedom to assemble, to meet with others. Okay. So you could extend that even to forming a militia group, free association, freedom to assemble, freedom to discuss the politics of the day. You have a right to do that, and the government cannot interfere with that. The ability to communicate with the government and the press. So you can send a letter to your senator and express your opinion. Okay? You can't threaten him. If you threaten a state senator or a federal senator, that's a whole different situation. You can't threaten people, but you can certainly make your position known. And you can publish newspapers, magazines, pamphlets. You can talk on the TV, the radio, the internet. YouTube. You have a right to do this. And this is why the government is so fearful of social media and the internet, is because they cannot control it, and people are actually exercising their First Amendment rights, and the government is having a hard time trying to censor that. They are trying to censor it. But so far, the courts have upheld our right under the First Amendment to say what we say and do what we do and assemble as we choose.
You can look online and find stories on this, but the Obama administration has actually reported videos to YouTube saying that they violated the end user agreement of YouTube. Basically, the government agency is saying, I think this video violates your user agreement, basically talking YouTube into banning videos and taking videos down. And that's illegal. I cannot say that enough. Illegal. The government is forcing YouTube to censor videos.
And now, YouTube can censor a video on their own. The First Amendment doesn't apply to YouTube, okay? But when the government tries to force YouTube to censor something, that's illegal. That's a violation of the First Amendment. Okay, Second Amendment, right to keep and bear arms. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. This is one of the most disagreed upon amendments. People try to say that, well, that means you can be in a militia, which is the National Guard, and the National Guard can have arms, but people cannot, and that's not true. What the militia is the whole body. Everyone is in the militia. Everyone who's capable of acting in concert for common defense is a member of the militia. And as such, a member of the militia, you can be drafted into federal service if the president calls up the militia. Okay, Now we can get into this very deeply. The 1903 Militia Act made it illegal for state governors to use their state National Guards to fight the federal government because they did exactly that during the Civil War. The 1903 Militia Act is unconstitutional and needs to be struck down. What it did was it caused the state militias to be federalized. So if you look at the Nebraska National Guard, it doesn't say Nebraska, it says U.S. Army. So the National Guard is not the militia. The National Guard is the federal army. And when they join the National Guard, they have to swear an oath to the president and to the federal government. They dual enlist. They enlist in the state guard and the federal government's army at the same time, and they wear U.S. Army on their uniform. They are not state militia. You are state militia. I am state militia. He is state militia. The National Guard is not.
So Second Amendment is also, I mean, this is what gun guys typically hammer on. And it's one of the reasons I wanted to make this video. To not just talk about the Second Amendment, like all our other videos, but to talk about the other 9. The Bill of Rights is a list of things that government cannot do. You'll hear people say that we should ban this kind of gun or this sort of gun, and people like us will say, we need these guns to protect ourselves from a tyrannical government. And they say, that couldn't happen here. Tyrannical government couldn't happen here. Right, because I have this. The Second Amendment protects all the others.
That's exactly right. Now, let me say this once again. The Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia, which is all people, being necessary to the security of a free state. That does not mean the state of Nebraska. That does not mean the state of Iowa. A free state is the state of being free, like the states of matter. Gas, liquid, solid. The state of being free. Your individual, personal freedom, your liberty, your freedom. In order to protect your freedom, you must be able to keep and bear arms, and the government cannot take them away.
In the Second Amendment, there is no expiration. If you watch the video I did on a gun control rights forum, a libertarian actually made this point. It doesn't say, so long as a militia is necessary to the security of a free state. It doesn't say so long as. It says it is necessary to the security of a free state. So there's no point where the government can say, oh, we're safe enough here. You're secure enough in your freedoms that you no longer need this right. There is no expiration.
Okay. The Third Amendment. Conditions for quarters for soldiers. No soldier shall, in time of peace, be quartered in any house without the consent of the owner, nor in time of war, but in a manner to be prescribed by law. This is not a big deal today, but it was a big deal at the time that this was written. The British would come over here with hundreds or thousands of troops in service to the king, but they had no way to billet them, they had no housing for them, they had no food for them. So they would simply march down the street, and each house, they'd put a soldier in that house, and the owner of that house had no choice but to take that soldier in, house him, and feed him. Okay? And so the Third Amendment deals directly with that and says the federal government cannot force you to house or feed a member of the military. And it's a good idea. It's not as common in the world today as it was then, but it was common then. So it was important at the time. All right. So the amendment guarantees that the Army cannot force homeowners to house and feed soldiers. Okay. Fourth Amendment. The right of search and seizure is regulated, okay? The right of the people to be secure in their homes, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable search and seizure shall not be violated, and no warrants shall be issued but upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, and particularly describing the place to be searched and the person or things to be seized. All right. No warrant shall be issued but upon probable cause. Probable cause of what? Probable cause that a law has been violated. Okay? So you have to have evidence and not merely reasonable suspicion, but probable cause, enough evidence on the face of it to believe that a crime has been committed and the person whom you seek to search committed that crime. That's probable cause. So that warrant is issued based on probable cause. And they cannot enter your home or search your person or search your car without probable cause or a search warrant. Okay? The Fourth Amendment protects the people from the government improperly taking property, papers, or persons to arrest you without a warrant, a valid warrant based on probable cause, which is, again, more than reasonable suspicion. It's actual evidence, articulatable evidence that a crime has been committed and that you probably committed it. So they cannot take you or your property without due process. Fifth Amendment.
All right, next we're going to talk about the Fifth Amendment, provisions concerning prosecution. No person shall be held to answer for a capital or otherwise infamous crime unless on a presentment or indictment of a grand jury, except in cases arising in the land or naval forces or in the militia, when in actual service in time of war or public danger, nor shall any person be subject for the same offense to be twice put in jeopardy of life or limb, nor shall be compelled in any criminal case to be a witness against himself, nor be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law, nor shall private property be taken for public use without just compensation. Most people are aware that the Fifth Amendment is their right to remain silent. The Fifth Amendment says that you cannot be compelled to testify against yourself in a criminal case. They cannot make you tell them what you did. So when they read the Miranda rights, you have the right to remain silent. That's talking about the Fifth Amendment. Use that right. Don't talk. This also allows your spouse to refuse to testify against you because they're bound by the same thing. Talking about being deprived of property without due process of law.
So when Senator Feinstein manages to get Congress to order everybody to turn in their AR-15 type rifles, they can't do that. They cannot deprive you of your property without due process. So if they want to take your property away, they have to prove that that property was stolen or obtained in some criminal means, or is the product of criminal activity, or in the event of eminent domain for public good, such as to build a road. Okay, but they cannot take your property for public good to build a shopping mall, for example.
So it also says they can't deprive you of life or liberty without due process of law. So when they talk about, incarcerating suspected terrorists who are American citizens indefinitely without trial, that's a violation of the Fifth Amendment. They can't deprive you of liberty without due process of law. And when talking about depriving you of life, so when Bond talks about that he has the right to kill Americans who are suspected terrorists, again in quotes, with drone strikes, you can't kill anybody without due process of law. You can't just go blowing up people that you think are terrorists if they're American citizens.
And just because you can't arrest somebody doesn't mean you can't give them due process. You can try them in absentia. In other words, try them, and even though you haven't arrested them. You notify them that they're being charged, by whatever means. You can publish it in the newspaper, you can tell them on the radio, you can send them a letter if you know where they are, but of course, if you know where they are, you should go and arrest them. So you notify them as best you can that they're charged, then you present that evidence at trial, you try them in absentia, you have an attorney represent them as though they'd entered a not guilty plea, and if you try them and convict them and sentence them to death, then you can go out and kill them because they've been tried. They've had their opportunity to face their accuser even though they chose not to. Okay, so that's important. It also talks about indictment by a grand jury for a felony or major offense. Most states, including Nebraska, have gotten away from the indictment by a grand jury. In Nebraska, they can charge you with a felony based on what they call a presentation of evidence that shows probable cause that a crime has been committed and you probably committed that. So this presentation of information, rather than indictment by grand jury, is faster, it's less expensive, it's not necessarily constitutional, but many states have varied from the Constitution and have weakened the necessity of grand jury indictment. So that's a problem. Indictment by grand jury should be required, and I believe it should still be required even in Nebraska, even though they no longer do that. It also talks about you cannot be held in jeopardy for the same offense twice. That's double jeopardy, okay? So if you're tried and acquitted of a charge, they cannot try you for the same charge again. That's important, okay? And again, you cannot be compelled to testify against yourself. All of these things are in the Fifth Amendment.
Okay. Sixth Amendment. This is the right to a speedy trial and witnesses and other things. Let's talk about this. The text from the document says, in all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall. Anytime you see the word shall in law, that means must. You must be given this. Anytime you see the word may in law, that means they have the option, or you have the option. Somebody has an option when the word may is used. When shall is used, it means they have to. In all criminal prosecutions, the accused shall enjoy the right to a speedy and public trial. by impartial jury of the state or district wherein the crime shall have been committed, which district shall have been previously ascertained by law, and to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation, to be confronted by the witnesses against him, to have compulsory process for obtaining witnesses in his favor, and to have the assistance of counsel for his defense. Okay. So the Sixth Amendment guarantees a speedy trial, a jury that doesn't already think you're guilty, okay, and a jury of your peers from the same county or city or area where you reside. Accused people can confront the witnesses that are brought against them, and they are allowed to have witnesses on their side as well, and they're allowed the means to gather those witnesses, and you have the right to a lawyer with the Sixth Amendment. Okay.
So that means that they can subpoena, the court can subpoena and must subpoena witnesses for the defense as well as subpoena witnesses for the prosecution. So witnesses can be compelled for both sides. Speedy trial and public trial. Again, the federal government has been holding secret hearings in Guantanamo Bay, and this is not public, this is not speedy. Many of these men have been held in captivity for years with no due process whatsoever, and certainly no public trial. And they say this is because of national security interests. Well, I'm sorry, national security interests have limited protection from this. You must be able to face your accuser, and it must be public, because how else can we ensure the due process is followed? Speedy is very ambiguous. What does speedy mean? The federal government routinely takes 6 months to a year to bring a case to trial. That doesn't seem speedy to me, but certainly more than a year is not speedy. Okay?
We should mention that all these rights apply to you as a U.S. citizen, whether you're in this country or other country. So, I was talking about the Fifth Amendment, how they can't deprive you of freedom or life. That doesn't mean if you're on vacation in France that they can find you and kill you without due process because you're not on American soil. That's not true. This is, it's though they have a prison outside the confines of the country. They can't hold you there because it's not U.S. soil. That's not going to fly. You have the same rights here as you do from our government in other countries as well. Okay? Seventh Amendment. This is your right to a trial by jury. In suits at common law, where the value in controversy shall exceed $20, okay, the right of trial by jury shall be preserved, and no fact tried by a jury shall be otherwise re-examined in any court of the United States than according to the rules of the common law. Okay? So the Seventh Amendment guarantees a jury trial in federal court cases.
Okay. And in the 10th Amendment, which we'll get to in a moment, applies the federal law to the state law, so you have a right to a trial in state law, in state cases as well. With this trial by jury, again, unless you waive it. If you waive the trial by jury, then a judge can determine the outcome. In a misdemeanor case, oftentimes a judge will determine guilt or innocence, and you don't necessarily need a jury. But unless you waive that right to a jury, then you can insist on it, and they must have a jury. Now, it says that once examined by a jury, it cannot be re-examined except by law. What they're talking about there is an appeal. Okay, you may appeal the conviction. The state might appeal a point of law or a sentencing discrepancy or whatever. So on that appeal, there may be a jury present on that appeal case as well. But typically, appeals are heard by judges or a panel of judges, and not necessarily by a jury.
Okay. Eighth Amendment. This is excessive bail or cruel punishment is what this deals with. It says excessive bail shall not be required, nor excessive fines imposed, nor cruel or unusual punishments inflicted. Okay, so the government can't cruelly or unusually punish you, and they can't impose excessive fines.
Okay, and the Latin is stare decisis, let the punishment fit the crime. Okay, let the punishment fit the crime. So you cannot convict this guy is stealing a loaf of bread and put him to death, and this guy is stealing a loaf of bread and give him a $10 fine. It has to be fair, it has to be equitable, and it has to be reasonable. Okay, and if the test for that is what did they give the last guy? Okay, so once someone is sentenced for a particular crime, it sets a precedent, and that precedent is typically followed by courts thereafter.
And obviously we're dealing with the United States Constitution here, but some states are going to have very strict guidelines, like if you do this, you get 5 years. If you do this, you get 10 years. In Nebraska, judges for the state have a pretty wide window. Some of our assaults or even manslaughter things can go from 1 to 20 years or 1 to 50 years. So a lot of times they give Nebraska judges a big window there so that they have a little bit of a power there to decide.
Well, discretion.
Yeah.
But still, 20 years is the maximum. So you can't give this guy the maximum sentence 20 years and the next guy even 30 years. The punishment is set, typically in the law. Now, one other thing on the Eighth Amendment, bail. The federal government typically does not have bail. Either they figure you're going to show up for court and they let you go on your own recognizance, or they hold you. Okay, if they think you're not going to show up, they're going to hold you. So typically in federal cases, you don't pay post bail in federal cases. On TV shows they do, but in reality, most federal courts, there is no bail. Okay, either they let you go pending trial or they don't. And if they let you go pending trial, then you have a pretrial services officer who will supervise you and keep in touch with you. Depending on the risk that they find, if you're a high risk, you might have to check in once a week. If you're a low flight risk, you might check in once a month pending trial. But if they feel that you will show up for court, they will let you go, and you don't typically post any kind of bail at the federal level.
That's good.
Ninth Amendment. The Ninth Amendment, rules of construction of the Constitution. The enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. Okay, so the Ninth Amendment is simply a statement that all rights, aside from those listed, other rights other than those listed may exist. Just because they are not listed doesn't mean they don't exist or can be violated. And so that's kind of an open-ended thing. And you can argue that other rights exist, but you need precedent and so on for that. And finally, the 10th Amendment, the right of the states under the Constitution. The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Okay, so the 10th Amendment states that any power not granted to the federal government belongs to the states or to the people. Okay, so I think that's pretty clear. Yeah. The federal government cannot make laws that are outside of its powers as defined by the Constitution, even though they are constantly trying to do just that.
So an example might be that there's nothing in the Constitution that says that the government can require you to have health insurance. There's nothing in the Constitution that says that the government can give billions of dollars away to other countries. So since it's not specifically said that the government can do this, it's illegal for the government to do it. The document doesn't say they have the power to do it, and they do it anyway. That's illegal.
Right. And people have to hold them accountable. The ultimate power is in the hands of the people and in the Second Amendment. Okay? This is the ultimate power, the means to resist an oppressive or illegal government. And if they take this away, we have no rights at all.
Yeah, if I heard it said that George Washington didn't use his right of free speech to get the British to leave, he shot them. The Second Amendment protects all the other amendments.
Yeah. And George did do some talking too. He didn't just start off shooting.
Yeah. It's an incremental thing.
Yes, yeah, you talk first, and if they don't listen, ultimately you have to hit the mule in the head with a 2x4 to get his attention.
All right, so this video is going to wrap up, I don't know, 30, 35 minutes here for the 10 amendments. Obviously, we spent more time on some than others, but I hope this gives you a better idea of what your rights actually are, and helps you understand that the Bill of Rights is what your rights are. These are not given to you by the document. They're not given to you by the Constitution. They are merely enumerated, listed in the Constitution. And the Bill of Rights are rights that you have as an individual, and it's a list of things that the government cannot do. A list of things that the government cannot take away and the government cannot do.
Yeah. Natural rights, God-given rights.
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you for watching. Like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and appreciate it. Yes,
Well, one more thing. The idea of the Second Amendment, the government trying to take away your arms because crime is high, is paramount to a deer being hunted by a wolf and the government's saying that to solve this crime problem, you cut off the deer's antlers so he can't fight back. In this way, the wolf will somehow be dissuaded from killing the deer. No one questions the deer's right to use his hooves, his teeth, his horns to defend himself. Why then would we want to cut off his horns? It's absurd. Okay. And this taking your property without due process, that means that when Dianne Feinstein and Congress passes a bill that says you have to turn in all of your assault weapons, they cannot do that.
That's right, we can just resume and we'll spice into it.
Okay.
I think I might go ahead and start again from the top of the Fifth Amendment.
All right.
All right, the Fifth Amendment, provision.
Now, if you cannot arrest them, then you try them in absentia, and you convict them in absentia, okay, and then you execute them. But you cannot execute them without due process.
Damn it. We're not meant to do a Fifth Amendment video.
Oh, yeah. They cannot arrest you.
It's my phone buzzing. I put it on silent.
They cannot arrest you. They cannot seize your
I'm gonna
property.
answer it 'cause yeah, hi, how's it going, honey? Hi. I got off work a little early in my dad's house trying to make a YouTube video.
Once again.
Okie dokie. We apparently don't need this amendment. Just skip this one.
It's an important one.
Now, if this happened on the First Amendment, everyone's trying to talk to us, that'd be funny.